Welcome to Pedo Teeth Talk, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, a podcast show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professionals specializing in pediatric dentistry.
Thank you for tuning in to Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you and your practice. Brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. I'm your host, Joel Berg. Thank you to our Pedo Teeth Talk sponsor, Hugh Freedy, for helping us bring you great content. We couldn't do this without them. Visit them at www.hughfreedy.com. That's HU-FRIEDY.com. We're here today with Dr. Ann Bynum. Dr. Ann Bynum is originally from Ocala, Florida. She did her undergraduate training at Florida State University. She then attended dental school at the University of Iowa, where she met her husband, Dr. Matt Bynum. She did 2 further years of training in pediatric dentistry at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Bynum moved to Greenville, South Carolina in 1997 and opened her practice in Simpsonville. She has 3 children of her own, all boys, and understands and appreciates the art and pediatric dentistry and parenting. Dr. Bynum is a diplomate of the American Board of Pediatric Dentistry, a member of the Southwest Society of Pediatric Dentistry, the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, and the American Dental Association. She has lectured and written numerous articles on customer service, marketing, leadership, and teamwork over the years. She enjoys spending time with her husband and their 3 boys, Matthew, Luke, and John. She enjoys working on her practice and traveling. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Bynum.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm excited about this, and particularly since we're going to hone in today on one very specific but extremely important topic, something, one of the many things about which you're an expert, and that is the ever more important first phone call to the office, that call. So why is this new patient phone call so critical? Is it true you don't get a second chance to make a first impression?
It is true, even though I've been practicing for 22 years, and things have definitely changed. The fabric of technology has changed, and I used to think that this was truly the first contact, but nowadays our families are finding us in all pedo practices. Families are finding us on Facebook. They're doing their research ahead of time. They're on social media. They're talking with their friends. They're looking at your website. So they have a pretty good idea of what their expectations are of your practice before they even pick up the phone to call. The one thing that hasn't changed is they all still have to call our office. And this is truly the first real impression that they get of you. And it can go south so fast if they have seen all this amazing stuff about you and your practice on social media, and they call your office and someone answers the phone and it's not in alignment with what they thought they were going to receive on that call.
So every call has to be the perfect call in terms of your office. You have to do it as if that's the only call you receive that day. Is that a good way of phrasing it?
That is a great way of phrasing it. And also, I think it's very important to get through to your team members who are going to be answering the phone that if they hang up, if the person on the other end hangs up and does not schedule, or if they let the phone ring too long, the person's not calling back. And that person who is going to schedule, that family who's going to schedule is how the paycheck gets paid.
Right. Yeah, I know we, as customers, we have that view as well, so we can put ourselves in that position every time. So who answers the phone in your office, Ann?
In our office, and we may be different than some, but everybody in our office is cross-trained to answer phones because most pedo practices are very busy. It's a whirlwind, and what we don't want to have happen is have all of our administrative ladies taking calls or helping patients checking in and checking out, and there's no one to take a call. So we have everyone in the building cross-trained to take calls, and the small print on that needs to read, if you don't know how to handle a call properly, you should not be answering the call. So we can talk about that later if you'd like, about how to make sure that everybody is trained to make these calls go smoothly in your practice.
I definitely want to talk to you about that. I love the idea that you've cross-trained everyone, but it sounds like, and we'll get to this, you have some kind of standard, some kind of assessment to determine the readiness of somebody to actually do this important task. And it just reminds me of why this very specific subject is so important, because it really is the key to everything. All the branding around your practice is through that first impression. So I love that you brought this up as the topic we're going to talk about. So regarding the call, I have a lot of things I want to ask you. When I call places, I kind of have a judgment about how long it takes them to answer the phone. And of course, after a certain number of rings, I'm not going to wait any longer. So what is the maximum amount of time you should let the phone ring?
Oh, and to piggyback onto that, how about when we do finally get the call answered and then we have to go through a switchboard of 7 different numbers and we don't get what we want anyways? So as much as I think switchboards are important, and we do have one here at our office because I share it with my husband, and you have to hit 1 to get my side and 2 to get his side, but you can't. You're right. As a customer, we get so frustrated when we just want to hit 0 and talk to a live person.
Oh, yeah, especially with the voice recognition software, and I start talking, enunciating, operator, something. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so how many times can the phone ring?
When we're training people, we prefer it to be 3 times. We don't want them. We are in a I want it now society, and people don't have time or choose not to have time to wait for 3 rings of a phone call. They're going to hang up and call somebody else. I have no science to support that other than I just think we have a very hasty society, and after 3 rings, they're either going to hang up and worry about it later or maybe never call back again.
I imagine there is science, and I'm sure in the customer service business there is some science around this, but I think we don't need to access that science. We can put ourselves, as we just discussed, in that position as a customer and say what would be okay for us. And this is something where we have to continually put ourselves in that caller's position. Is there a specific greeting? I guess you can call it a script or some kind of planned greeting that you recommend that people say and use when they answer the phone?
In our office, yes. And I think I love this question because when I lecture on it and I say what you shouldn't say when you answer the phone and the audience laughs, it's not funny. This is how people answer dental office phones. You call and they say, Sunshine Dental. Oh, is your first name Sunshine and your last name Dental? No. So very impersonal.
I guess it's better than Sunset Dental, but anyway.
Right. Or answer, and still today, offices, dentist's office, doctor's office, Dr. Smith's office.
Right.
Very impersonal. And again, we live in a society where people are forming their opinions of us before that phone call nowadays. And you have to be clear on the phone. You can't sound like you're auctioning something off. It is a mouthful in our office, what we ask our team to say, but we ask our team to say, thank you for calling Holly Tree Pediatric Dentistry. This is Kim. How may I help you?
Perfect. Gosh, I got chills when you said that.
So you know where you called. You know you haven't.
I'm ready to come
dialed.
in.
Well, come on.
Yeah.
No, you're I'd give you a prize if you were good. But so
okay.
With a greeting like that, you've called the right number, because a lot of times I'll call places and if they don't say who it is, I'm like, is this Zaxby's? Did I call Zaxby's? So, you've told them we're Holly Tree. You now have a name to associate with this phone call, and I'm telling you that I can be the person that helps you.
And exactly. And you thanked them for calling, which I love. It's very important. Yeah, how much you appreciate. Right away, they know you're grateful practice. You're grateful for your for your patients. Yeah, I think you alluded to some things you've heard. Can you maybe just tell us a couple of maybe 2 big no-nos that you've seen in offices when they take patient calls? A couple of examples would be great.
Yes, and some of this stuff I've picked up just from talking with other offices when I'm out there lecturing, and doctors or team members will come up and tell me, I can't tell you how many missed opportunities we've had because, Betty's answering the phone and this is what she's saying, and my doctor doesn't want to get involved in it because Betty's the sister. I don't even know. But I think one of the biggest no-nos is to start talking about money or insurance before you've established rapport with the person on the other end of the phone. And I know that, sometimes a parent or a family is calling and their first thing is, are you in network with Delta? Or how much is a cleaning? And it takes a real skill set of the person answering the phone to deflect that and start building rapport with that person on the phone. And it can be done.
Yeah, so even though the patient may bring those kinds of questions initially into the conversation, like, do you take insurance? You're saying you train your staff not to get to that, kind of not deflect it. You can answer it, but not make that the first part of the interaction. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because then they're shut down. They don't hear anything else past that point. They don't want to go any further with you. And we are not in network with any insurance company. So I don't want the only interaction they have with us to be, are you in network with so-and-so? And my employees say, no, we are not in network with anybody. How negative does that sound?
Yeah, you want them to be with you because they like the care you provide their child. That's what you want.
Right, and we need the chance to get to know them on that phone call. And I'm super proud of the people that answer the phone here, and they turn lots of situations around. And a lot of people, and this, we all know this that are listening to this, I'm a mom and I'm a parent and I don't understand my own medical insurance. So that a lot of these families that are calling our offices, they don't really understand what they have, what their benefits are, what's covered, what things mean, terminology. So it's a great opportunity to educate as well.
Yes, yeah, it's very confusing to everybody. So it makes sense from that perspective alone not to engage into that conversation on a very confusing subject before you establish a rapport. So let me ask you, Ann, what information do you think is pertinent to obtain during this first phone call?
I think you need to build rapport with the person you're talking to first. You need to find out the name of the person you're talking to and use that name while you're talking to them. Because now we're establishing a relationship. Now we have something to work with. The next thing, of course, is you're going to find out the patient's name. I can't tell you how many times, and it happens in my office, you think you're getting all the information and you hang up and I forgot the phone number, or I forgot the date of birth, or whatever it is. But I would tell you the basic information is super important to know, not only the name of who you're talking to, but who they are. Is this the grandmother? Is this the great-grandmother? Is this a nanny? Is this mom? Who are we talking to? Patient's name, date of birth, get an address, get a phone number. In this day and age, we really like to accumulate 2 phone numbers while we have them on the phone because phones get shut off, phones run out of minutes, phones are blocked, voicemails are full. So it's nice to have 2. And then we start talking about insurance and payment. So we want to get all the insurance information. And, of course, we want to know who referred them to our office. And we say, who can we thank for referring you to our office today? And by gosh, we better thank them.
Absolutely. So when the person who's answering the phone is gathering all this information, I'm assuming they're entering it into a computer software. Is that correct? While they're taking it or not?
Mm-hmm. They are, and I was going to tell you when we are training new team members, and every new team member, whether they're a clinical person or an administrative person, they rotate through our office for a week at a time in almost every position. So when they're there administratively for a whole week, this is when it really gets ingrained in their head. You can't have an assistant coming up front 10 minutes here, 5 minutes here. It has to be, you have to sit down and learn this skill. But when they're learning it, I recommend that you write it down instead of trying to keep up with it in the computer and where does it go in Dentrix or whatever software you're using. So when we are training people, we recommend that they write it all first and then they transfer it into the computer. Another really important thing is the spellings. Ask them how they spell their name. If you're unsure, ask for a spelling, first names and last names. There's nothing sweeter than the sound of our name, and if you can't spell it right or pronounce it right, again, that's not the soft touch we're looking for.
I really like that you said when early after their training or the initial stages of doing this that they should write it down rather than let the computer be the determinant of how quickly they gather it, because that's annoying to me as a customer when I hear them talking to me and we have a good rapport, but I'm waiting for them the computer, wait a minute, it's slow today.
Yes.
Blah blah blah. That's very frustrating.
Yes.
I don't need to know that your computer's slow. That's not my problem, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
And the other part of that too is when you're handwriting something, you're not making a typo when you're handwriting something. It's when you're entering it that you're going to make the typo. So let's do one thing at a time.
Exactly. We will now pause for a word from our sponsor.
Hugh Freedy is the global leader in dental instrument manufacturing and infection prevention solutions that keep you performing at your best. For more information on Hugh Freedy products, visit hughfreedy.com/AAPD-crowns. That's hugh-freedy.com/AAPD-crowns. And enter the promo code 2682 if placing an order for pedo crowns.
We are back with Dr. Ann Bynum. We're talking about that really important first phone call when a patient's family first calls the office to learn about making an appointment for their child. How you handle it is make it or break it. So, Ann, how do you handle it when you inevitably need to put somebody on hold? That has to happen. So how do you train and how do you manage that?
There's a lot of things you can do right when you have to put someone on hold and a lot of things you can do incorrectly. Things that, and again, as a customer, like we've been talking about, I don't like it when someone says, hold a sec, hold please, just hold a minute. If you're going to put me on hold for a sec or put me on hold for a minute, why don't you just talk to me? Because we all know it's not going to be a second or a minute. It's going to be longer than that. So one thing that we really stress is not to say, can you hold a sec or can you hold a minute? You also want to ask permission. May I please put you on a brief hold? And if they say, no, I don't have time for that, you better find a way to continue to talk to them, because if you do hit that hold button, they're not going to be there when you get back, most likely. So ask permission. May I put you on a brief hold, please?
Yeah, I don't know anybody who, when they hear, right, brief could mean a lot of things, but I think we all have that fear of the endless hold. Oh no, I got to go turn off the pot on the stove in a couple of minutes, and if I don't, they don't come back soon, I'm going to burn my dinner, or my lunch.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's.
And then the second bookend to being put on hold is when you take them off hold. Say your name again. This is Kim. I'm back. Thank you so much for waiting. Because a lot of times in places, when you've been on hold, someone picks up and it's a different person. And you're like, oh, I was holding for someone else. I was trying to make an appointment. Oh, hold please. And you're back on hold. So let them know, this is me. I'm back. And thank you. Thank you for letting me place you on a brief hold.
Love it. You're reconnecting. And the anxiety producing things are what you want to avoid for the customer. So what are some things that the team members can do to empower the office to the new patient while they have them on the phone? Some things to really bring those positive experiences to play.
I think it's very important that anybody who works for you knows their doctors. You need to know where your doctors went to school. You need to know what teams they root for. And that just builds a culture within your office for success. But I like to hear my team say, like let's say somebody says they've just moved here from Florida. Well, that's a perfect lead-in for my team member to say, oh, Dr. Ann went to Florida State. And they can say, oh, well, I'm a Gator. And they can say, oh, well, I'm so sorry for you. You can make it fun. You can make it playful. And now you have even a deeper connection with that person. So I think knowing where your doctors went to school, a parent who's unsure, maybe this is the second or third opinion. Hey, Dr. Bynum's been in practice 22 years. I've worked for her for 12 of those years. You're going to love her. She is so great at her job.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like I'm trying to kiss butt with my employees. No, I'm trying to make families feel comfortable when they come here to meet us.
No, I think that's great. I like that as a customer, and I also like it as a practicing pediatric dentist when the staff talks favorably about other doctors in the practice. So I think all that, It just builds the team. It builds the team up when you hear that. It makes everybody feel good. It's the right thing to do.
And not just the doctors. Tell them, oh my gosh, you are just going to love meeting everyone when you get here. I'm Angie. If I'm not the one that checks you in, please come find me. I love talking to you today.
Exactly. So in the event they don't encounter the person they spoke with, they're going to get somebody that's going to be pleasing to them and be of similar quality. So what's the next thing you do? What's the next step that you should take after this new patient phone call?
I think that the question that you're asking is, it used to be that we would send out a welcome packet, and now what we do is we send out an email. So that email is going to be from the person that took the phone call. Hey, this is Angie. Below is the link that I talked to you about on the phone. Please fill it out. If that is the way that you do your paperwork or however you handle stuff at your office. But that's one way. If you still send out paper forms for people to do, that's another thing that needs to happen, and it needs to have a touch to it. It needs to be, if you're going to mail something, the person who took the phone call should write something on there. Hey, this is from Angie, who you talked to on the phone. Thank you so much for getting this back to us in a timely manner. So again, you're trying to keep that relationship and that rapport with that family. And then the other thing that I stress to practices is, and again, we have lots of technology today. So, we rely on our systems to send the text message reminder and the email reminder and the voicemail reminder. But in our practice, all new patients get a live phone call from someone at our office 1 to 2 days before the appointment. Hey, this is Angie, just circling back with you. I wanted to see if you had any questions that you had thought of that you wanted to ask before you get here. I wanted to make sure you know exactly where we're located, which exit we're off of, and we're looking forward to seeing Jessica tomorrow at 2:30.
Yeah, just to maintain the branding of the practice, which is about interpersonal experience, satisfying from a personal level, the family and the child, of course. I think that's perfect. Sometimes when I call any kind of business, I listen very carefully to how they handle calls, whether it's a dental practice or it's the Marriott hotels or whatever it may be. And often you'll hear calls are being recorded for quality assurance. I don't think you record your calls, but what do you think about the idea of that? Is that a bad idea?
We do not record our calls. I think it's a great training tool. It must be a great training tool because it's used by many large organizations and corporations. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not sure it's one of the top tools that comes to mind for a dental practice. If you really want to find out how your calls are going, I recommend a secret shopper.
Okay.
Find someone
that's better.
Yes, and have a form made out. There are plenty of forms out there, or you can make your own on what you want to be graded on. And have a friend, maybe a friend in another dental office, call and be a secret shopper, and then get a graded report. I have a consultant who does this for me randomly almost every year. Super helpful, keeps people on their toes, lets us know we're not perfect. We have a lot of things we need to work on. So I would go secret shopper before I would go to the technology that is probably involved to record calls.
Yeah, great idea. I think it's the best way to make sure you're staying at the level that you want to stay. So I want to ask you for our last question today, in the limited time we have, Dr. Bynum, you mentioned training, and I think all the great advice you've given us today requires a really effective way of training the staff to execute on that plan that you've described and all these things. So what is the best way to train the new staff in handling calls?
I think it's how we get good at anything in our lives. It's practice, and it takes practice. And you can't ask an assistant to field the phone, one day a month when everybody else is out of the office for something. It takes repetition, it takes practice, and it also takes good feedback. You need feedback from those around you. Hey, you said this great, or you could improve on this way. So lots of practice. I think another great tool when you're first learning to get all your information is a checklist, so that you don't forget the phone number, that you do have a place to write down that this is the grandmother.
I see.
And like we talked about before, write it all down before you enter it into the software.
Wow. So you've given us, I'm going to take a lot of this back to where I work, and I think, I'm going to listen more carefully, and maybe I'll call your office one day and tell you I had that great experience that you just described. I bet I will, based on knowing you, Ann, and how things are run there. Yeah, I'm sure you will. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you to our audience for tuning into Pedo Teeth Talk, where we bring you the contemporary issues important to you in your practice, brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. I'm your host, Joel Berg, and we look forward to hearing you again next time.
Pedo Teeth Talk is brought to you by the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, the show that delivers cutting-edge ideas for the professional specializing in pediatric dentistry. If you have any questions or comments, please email info@aapd.org. We welcome your ideas for future shows and guests. For more information on the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, visit aapd.org.